Harold was an elderly man in his late 70s, living a quiet life in a small, friendly town. With silver hair and twinkling blue eyes, he was well known in his neighborhood. He often spent his mornings sipping coffee on his porch, watching the world go by, and greeting passersby with a warm smile. Though life had given him many challenges, Harold had a positive outlook and a love for cars that stretched back to his younger days. He had memories of tinkering with engines and cruising down the highway in the cars he adored. One day, as he sat on his porch, Harold realized it was time to trade in his old vehicle. The little car had served him well, but it was starting to show its age, with a few dents and rust spots that told stories of its long journey. Harold wanted something reliable, a car that would take him to visit family and friends without worry. He decided to visit the local car dealership, thinking it would be an exciting adventure. As he drove to the dealership, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. He remembered the last time he had bought a car many years ago. It had been an enjoyable experience filled with laughter and friendly conversations. Harold hoped this visit would be similar. Arriving at the dealership, he stepped out of his car and took a deep breath, feeling the energy of the bustling lot. There were shiny new cars everywhere, sparkling in the sunlight, each one promising a new adventure. Entering the dealership, Harold was greeted by a wave of noise, people chatting, phones ringing, and the sound of engines revving. He approached a sales desk, ready to ask about his options. However, as he looked around, he noticed that most of the staff seemed more focused on the younger customers. They were animatedly discussing features and prices with people who looked like they could spend a lot on a fancy vehicle. Harold felt a twinge of disappointment as he realized he might not be the priority here. After a few moments, a sales representative finally approached Harold, but their demeanor was indifferent. The sales rep glanced at Harold, then quickly shifted attention to a younger couple who had just entered. Harold tried to get their attention again, explaining that he was interested in trading in his old car. But the rep barely listened, instead prioritizing the couple who were clearly more enthusiastic and, in their eyes, more valuable customers. Feeling ignored, Harold's heart sank. It was frustrating to be overlooked simply because of his age. He had so much to offer and share, yet he was treated like he didn't matter. After waiting for what felt like an eternity, he finally decided to leave the dealership. As he walked back to his car, he couldn't shake the feeling of disappointment. Driving home, he reflected on the experience. Why had the staff dismissed him so easily? Did they think that older people didn't know what they wanted? He shook his head, determined not to let this experience define him. Instead of feeling defeated, Harold decided he would turn the tables on the dealership. He would do his research, learn everything he could about cars, and come back stronger. This wouldn't be the last they'd hear from him. As he pulled into his driveway, Harold felt a spark of determination. He wouldn't allow age to dictate his worth. He was still full of life, energy, and knowledge, and he would prove it. That day marked the beginning of his journey, one that would challenge stereotypes and redefine how he viewed himself. After leaving the dealership, Harold felt a swirl of emotions. Disappointment mixed with frustration as he recalled how he was treated. The thought of being overlooked simply because of his age stung more than he expected. Harold had always been proud of his ability to adapt and learn new things. He remembered when he first learned to fix engines, teaching himself from books and through trial and error. If he could do that, he could certainly learn about the cars he wanted to buy. Back at home, Harold sat at his kitchen table with a steaming cup of tea. He grabbed his tablet and began searching for information about cars. He discovered numerous websites filled with reviews, specifications, and comparisons. The more he read, the more his confidence grew. Harold was fascinated by all the features that modern cars offered, from advanced safety systems to fuel efficiency ratings. It was a different world from the vehicles he had grown up with, and he was eager to learn all about it. He spent hours researching different models, reading reviews from both experts and everyday users. He took notes on various brands, looking for reliable vehicles that fit his needs. Harold was surprised at how much information was available and how much he could learn. With each page he turned, he felt a sense of empowerment. He was no longer just an old man looking for a car. He was becoming an informed consumer. As he continued his research, he made a list of cars that caught his interest. He noted their prices, features, and even customer satisfaction ratings. Harold felt like a detective piecing together a puzzle, and he was determined to solve it. The thought of returning to the dealership filled him with a renewed sense of purpose. He would walk in with knowledge and confidence, ready to negotiate like he had never done before. In the following days, Harold visited forums and watched videos about car buying tips. He learned about negotiation tactics, the importance of understanding financing options, and how to assess a vehicle's value. Each piece of information added to his growing sense of control over the situation. He was no longer intimidated by the thought of dealing with salespeople who had previously dismissed him. Instead, he felt ready to challenge them. But Harold didn't stop there. He also decided to connect with friends and family who had experience buying cars. He reached out to his neighbor, who had recently purchased a new vehicle. They sat down over coffee, and Harold listened intently as his neighbor shared insights from their own car buying experience. This discussion helped Harold feel even more prepared and reminded him that he wasn't alone in this journey. With each passing day, Harold's anticipation grew. He visualized himself walking back into that dealership, armed with knowledge and confidence. He imagined the surprised looks on the salespeople's faces when he confidently spoke about the cars he wanted and the deals he expected. The idea of surprising them filled him with excitement and joy. Finally, the day came when Harold learned about a special event happening at the dealership. He was informed that there would be special deals and a chance to test drive new models. This news was the final push he needed. Harold marked the date on his calendar and began preparing for the event. He could hardly wait to put all his research to the test. As he prepared to face the dealership once again, Harold realized that this experience was about more than just buying a car. It was about proving to himself and others that age didn't limit one's ability to learn, grow, and advocate for oneself. Harold was ready for the challenge ahead, and he felt a sense of excitement building within him. The tables were about to turn, and he couldn't wait to see how the story would unfold. As the day of the dealership event approached, Harold felt a mix of excitement and nerves bubbling inside him. He had spent the past few weeks preparing for this moment, gathering information and arming himself with knowledge about the cars he wanted. Now, it was time to put everything he had learned to the test. He knew he had to walk into the dealership with confidence, ready to stand his ground and advocate for himself. On the morning of the event, Harold woke up early, feeling a rush of energy. He put on his favorite shirt, the one he always wore when he wanted to feel good about himself. It was a simple blue checkered pattern, but it brought back memories of family gatherings and happy occasions. He looked in the mirror, straightened his glasses, and took a deep breath. Today was going to be different. As he drove to the dealership, Harold glanced out the window, taking in the sights of his town. The sun was shining, and the flowers were blooming in front yards, creating a colorful display. He felt a sense of calm wash over him as he focused on the day ahead. Pulling into the dealership parking lot, he could already see a crowd of people gathered outside, chatting and looking at the cars. The atmosphere was buzzing with excitement. Walking through the entrance, Harold was met with the sound of laughter and the clinking of coffee cups. The dealership was filled with bright lights, and the shiny new cars seemed to beckon him closer. This time, he wouldn't allow himself to be overlooked. He had done his homework, and he was ready to engage with the sales team on his terms. After a few moments, he spotted a familiar face, one of the salespeople who had previously dismissed him. Harold felt a surge of determination. He approached the rep with a smile, ready to show that he meant business. The salesperson, recognizing him, quickly shifted their demeanor, eager to assist him this time. "How can I help you today?" they asked, but Harold noticed a hint of surprise in their eyes. "Actually, I'm here to discuss some options for trading in my old car," he replied confidently. "I've done quite a bit of research, and I'm interested in a couple of models I found online." Harold pulled out his neatly organized notes, showcasing the information he had gathered. The salesperson seemed taken aback by Harold's knowledge, and for the first time, they listened attentively. As they moved to the floor of the dealership, Harold pointed out the specific models he had researched. He asked questions about features, safety ratings, and warranties. The salesperson scrambled to provide answers, clearly realizing they were dealing with someone who was well informed. Harold felt a thrill of empowerment as he engaged in this conversation, enjoying the shift in dynamics. He took his time, not rushing into any decisions. He test drove a few vehicles, relishing the feeling of being behind the wheel of newer models. Each drive brought a smile to his face as he tested the comfort, handling, and technology. He felt like a kid again, excited by the freedom that came with being in a new car. As the day went on, Harold continued to impress not only the sales team, but also other customers who observed his interactions. People began to notice the confident elderly man who was unafraid to speak his mind. A few even approached him, complimenting him on his knowledge and asking for tips on buying a car. Harold found himself sharing advice, enjoying the sense of community that formed around shared experiences. By the time he sat down to discuss pricing, Harold was ready. He remembered his research and the prices he had noted. He felt a sense of pride, knowing he was no longer just a passive participant in the car buying experience. Instead, he was a player on the field, ready to negotiate and make decisions that were best for him. The sales team was eager to close the deal, and Harold could see their determination. But he stood firm, ready to challenge any offer that didn't meet his expectations. This was his moment, and he intended to make the most of it. The energy in the dealership was electric, and Harold was at the center of it all, prepared to turn the tables and show that he was not to be overlooked. As the day continued at the dealership, Harold felt a growing sense of excitement. He had already surprised himself by how well he was handling the entire experience. After years of being overlooked and underestimated, it felt refreshing to step into a position of confidence and knowledge. But he also knew that the real challenge was still ahead, getting the right deal on the car he wanted. As he sat across from the salesperson in the sales office, Harold felt a mix of determination and focus. The air was thick with anticipation as they began discussing prices. The salesperson opened with an offer that seemed reasonable at first glance, but Harold was prepared. He had researched comparable cars, and he knew exactly what to look for in a fair deal. "Let's take a closer look at that price," he said, keeping his tone calm but firm. He pulled out his notes and started pointing to the figures he had collected. "I've seen similar models going for less at other dealerships, and they offer more features." The salesperson's expression shifted slightly, realizing that Harold was not just any customer. He had come fully equipped with information. The negotiation began. Each time the salesperson offered a new price, Harold countered with facts and figures, making sure to back up his arguments with evidence. He felt empowered as he watched the salesperson squirm a bit, trying to adjust their approach to accommodate his demands. This was not the experience he had on his first visit, where he felt like a forgotten item on a shelf. This time, he was at the center of the conversation. The back and forth continued, and Harold could see the wheels turning in the salesperson's head. He realized they were becoming more cautious with their offers, knowing he was serious about finding the best deal. "What about the warranties?" he asked. "I want to make sure I'm covered for the long haul." The salesperson scrambled to provide information, but Harold had already done his homework. He had a clear understanding of the types of warranties offered and what would be best for him. As the negotiation progressed, Harold could see other customers in the dealership looking over. Some seemed intrigued by the confident older man who was not afraid to speak his mind. A couple of young families even paused their conversations to listen in, amazed at how well Harold was handling the situation. He felt a sense of pride. Not only was he advocating for himself, but he was also setting an example for others who might feel marginalized or overlooked. Finally, after what felt like hours of negotiation, the salesperson laid out an offer that met most of Harold's criteria. It was a fair deal, one that included a reasonable price, a solid warranty, and a few added features that he hadn't initially expected. Harold took a moment to gather his thoughts. He appreciated the effort, but he wasn't quite ready to accept just yet. "Can you do a bit better?" he asked, looking the salesperson in the eye. "I think we can make this work if we can find that sweet spot." There was a brief silence as the salesperson weighed their options, clearly feeling the pressure. After a few moments of deliberation, the salesperson nodded, realizing they needed to meet Harold halfway to close the deal. "All right, let's see what we can do," they said, offering a final number. Harold smiled, feeling a rush of satisfaction. He had done it. He had turned the tables and negotiated a deal that felt right for him. It wasn't just about getting a new car. It was about reclaiming his sense of self-worth and proving that he could navigate this world just as well as anyone else. As he signed the paperwork, Harold felt a sense of accomplishment wash over him. He was not just another elderly man in a dealership. He was a knowledgeable consumer who had stood his ground and made his voice heard. He knew this experience would not only change how he viewed himself, but might also inspire others to stand up for themselves, regardless of age. This journey was far from over, but today was a huge step in the right direction. As the paperwork was finalized, Harold felt a wave of excitement wash over him. He had done it. He had negotiated his way to a deal he was proud of, and soon he would be driving home in a shiny new car. The whole experience felt surreal, and he couldn't help but smile at the thought of how far he had come since his first visit to the dealership. After signing the final documents, the salesperson led Harold outside to see his new car. As they walked through the lot, Harold's heart raced with anticipation. The sun glinted off the fresh paint, and he admired the sleek design of the vehicle. It was a modern model, packed with features that he had only seen in brochures. "This is it," the salesperson said, handing Harold the keys with a proud smile. Harold couldn't believe it was real. He took a moment to absorb the scene, the laughter of families nearby, the chatter of customers discussing their purchases, and the happy faces of the staff as they celebrated their sales. He climbed into the driver's seat and adjusted the mirrors, feeling the comfortable leather upholstery. The smell of the new car was invigorating, and he relished the thought of all the adventures waiting for him in this vehicle. After a brief demonstration of the car's features, Harold felt ready to take it for a spin. The salesperson wished him well as he backed out of the parking space, and he could feel the thrill of the moment. As he drove out of the dealership, the sense of freedom and possibility filled him. This car wasn't just a new mode of transportation. It symbolized a new chapter in his life, one where he would not be underestimated because of his age. The road ahead was clear, and Harold decided to take a scenic route home. He rolled down the windows and let the fresh air rush in. The wind tousled his hair, and he turned up the music, enjoying the upbeat tunes that filled the car. He felt alive, like a young man again, free to explore and embark on new adventures. Each turn of the steering wheel felt empowering, and he couldn't help but smile at how invigorating this moment was. As he drove, Harold thought about the conversations he had overheard at the dealership. He had witnessed the excitement in the eyes of other customers as they engaged with the sales team. He realized that his own journey could inspire others, especially those who might feel overlooked or underestimated. He had stood his ground and fought for what he wanted, and if he could do it, others could too. When he finally pulled into his driveway, Harold sat in the car for a moment, soaking in the experience. He glanced at the familiar surroundings of his home, the garden he had tended to for years, the porch where he spent countless mornings with his coffee. Everything felt brighter now, and he was eager to share his success with his friends and family. Stepping out of the car, he felt a sense of pride. It was time to celebrate this achievement. He invited a couple of neighbors over to show off his new purchase. As they gathered around the car, he shared the story of his journey, from the initial disappointment at the dealership to the triumph of negotiating a great deal. His neighbors listened intently, their eyes wide with admiration. "This car is not just a new ride. It's a symbol of taking charge of my life," Harold said, his voice filled with enthusiasm. "If you ever feel overlooked, remember that you have the power to stand up for yourself. Don't let anyone define what you can or cannot do based on your age." His neighbors cheered him on, inspired by his words. They admired the car, asking questions about its features and performance. Harold happily shared all the knowledge he had gained during his research. He felt a sense of community forming around him, and it warmed his heart. That evening, as he sat on his porch, Harold reflected on the day. He realized that this experience was about more than just buying a car. It was about reclaiming his voice and proving that age should never be a barrier to pursuing one's goals. He felt a renewed sense of purpose and knew this was just the beginning of many adventures to come. With the open road ahead and the wind in his hair, Harold was ready to embrace whatever life had in store for him. In the days following his successful car purchase, Harold found himself brimming with newfound confidence and excitement. His shiny new vehicle had become more than just a mode of transportation. It was a reminder of his journey, a symbol of empowerment that inspired him to take on new challenges. He felt eager to put his new car to use, not just for errands around town, but for exploring the world beyond. One sunny Saturday morning, Harold decided it was the perfect day for a little adventure. He pulled out a map he had tucked away for years, filled with highlighted routes and little notes on places he wanted to visit. Among them was a beautiful park known for its stunning walking trails and vibrant wildlife. Harold remembered going there with friends in his younger days, enjoying picnics and nature walks. Today, he would revisit those memories and make new ones. After a quick breakfast, he hopped into his car and adjusted the seat and mirrors. The vehicle felt comfortable and inviting. With a deep breath, he started the engine, listening to the gentle purr that signaled readiness for the journey ahead. As he drove, he let the music play softly in the background, enjoying the rhythm of the road. The route to the park was familiar yet refreshing. Harold passed by landmarks that held memories. The bakery where he used to pick up treats for his family. The library where he spent countless hours reading. Each place brought back a story, filling him with a sense of nostalgia and warmth. He felt grateful for all the experiences that had shaped his life. As he arrived at the park, Harold was greeted by the sight of lush greenery and blooming flowers. The sun peeked through the trees, casting playful shadows on the ground. He parked his car, feeling a wave of excitement as he stepped out and inhaled the fresh, earthy scent of nature. It was the perfect day for a walk. Harold began his stroll along the winding paths, taking his time to appreciate the beauty around him. The park was lively with families, joggers, and children playing. He smiled as he watched a group of kids laughing and chasing each other, their joy infectious. Harold felt a sense of connection to these strangers, a reminder that no matter their age, everyone shared the simple pleasure of being outdoors. As he walked further along the trail, he found a quiet bench nestled under a large oak tree. He decided to sit for a moment, taking in the sights and sounds. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and birds chirped in the distance. Harold closed his eyes for a moment, feeling grateful for the peace that surrounded him. While sitting, he noticed a few elderly people walking by, and he felt a spark of inspiration. He waved them over and struck up a conversation. They shared stories of their favorite places to visit and hobbies they enjoyed. Harold was delighted to discover they had similar interests: gardening, traveling, and even tinkering with old cars. The conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter and camaraderie. "Life is too short to let anyone tell you what you can or cannot do," one of the new friends said, echoing Harold's recent experiences at the dealership. "Every day is an opportunity to make new memories, no matter how old we are." Harold felt a sense of validation in those words. It was a reminder that he was not alone in his journey. They exchanged contact information, promising to meet up again for future outings. Harold left the park that day not just with a sense of joy from nature, but also with the beginnings of new friendships. As he drove home, Harold couldn't help but think about how much had changed in such a short time. The new car had opened doors to experiences he had once put aside. It symbolized a renewed spirit, one that embraced life with enthusiasm rather than fear. Arriving home, Harold felt a sense of accomplishment. He had taken a step outside his comfort zone, not just by buying a car, but by reaching out and making connections with others. It was a reminder that life was full of possibilities waiting to be explored. With his car parked in the driveway, he took a moment to admire it once more. It wasn't just a vehicle. It was a key to a world of adventures and friendships. Harold knew this was just the beginning. There were more places to explore, more stories to create, and more people to meet. With a smile on his face, he looked forward to the journey ahead, ready to embrace whatever life had in store. As the days turned into weeks, Harold found himself embracing his new lifestyle with renewed enthusiasm. His car, now a familiar sight in his driveway, had become a gateway to new adventures and experiences. He enjoyed the sense of freedom it brought, along with the spontaneity to explore the world around him. Each morning, he would glance at it and think about where he might go next. One evening, after returning home from a busy day, Harold flipped through the local newspaper and spotted an article about a community festival happening that weekend. It promised food stalls, local crafts, and live music, a perfect opportunity to enjoy a day out and connect with his neighbors. He felt a spark of excitement. It would be a great chance to meet new people and have some fun. That Saturday morning, Harold woke up early, eager to get ready for the festival. He dressed casually, but put on a nice shirt that made him feel good. After a quick breakfast, he grabbed his car keys and set off, the sun shining brightly overhead. As he drove through town, he noticed the streets filled with people setting up for the festival. Colorful banners fluttered in the breeze, and the sweet aroma of food filled the air. Upon arriving at the festival, Harold parked his car and stepped out, feeling the lively atmosphere surrounding him. Music echoed from a nearby stage, and laughter mingled with the sounds of vendors calling out to potential customers. He took a moment to soak it all in, enjoying the sense of community that enveloped him. Walking through the festival grounds, Harold admired the various booths displaying handmade crafts and delicious food. He stopped at a stall selling homemade jams and picked up a jar of strawberry preserves, thinking it would be a delightful treat to enjoy at home. Next, he wandered over to a food truck serving tacos and decided to grab a bite. The flavors burst in his mouth, and he relished the experience, savoring every bite while chatting with the friendly vendor. As he continued to explore, Harold noticed a small crowd gathered around a local band playing upbeat music. He found a spot to stand and enjoy the performance, tapping his feet to the rhythm. The band was lively, and the audience was fully engaged, singing along to familiar tunes. Harold couldn't help but feel the energy around him. It reminded him of the joy of music and how it brought people together. After the performance, he spotted a booth offering free workshops on various topics, including painting and gardening. Intrigued, he decided to join a short painting class. Harold had never considered himself an artist, but he was eager to try something new. The instructor was warm and encouraging, guiding the participants through the process step by step. With a brush in hand and a canvas in front of him, Harold felt a wave of creativity flowing through him. He painted a simple landscape, mixing colors and letting his imagination take flight. As he painted, he chatted with others in the class, sharing stories and laughter. The experience was refreshing and liberating, and he realized how much he enjoyed expressing himself through art. By the end of the day, Harold left the festival feeling uplifted and inspired. He carried his newly painted canvas proudly, a reminder of the fun he had and the connections he made. As he drove home, he reflected on how important it was to engage with the community and embrace new experiences. Back at home, He placed the painting on the wall, smiling at his work. It wasn't just a piece of art. It was a representation of the joy and creativity that had filled his day. Harold felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing he had stepped outside of his comfort zone and tried something new. In the following days, Harold found himself thinking about the festival and all the wonderful people he had met. He realized that he didn't want to stop there. He wanted to continue exploring new activities, meeting new friends, and learning more about the world around him. The festival had sparked a fire in him, and he was determined to keep that flame alive. With his new car ready for more adventures, Harold began planning his next outing. He looked into local classes, community events, and even nature hikes. Each new idea filled him with excitement, and he felt grateful for the opportunities that lay ahead. He had transformed his life in ways he never thought possible, proving to himself that age was just a number, and that the best was yet to come. As the weeks passed, Harold became more involved in his community than ever before. The festival had opened his eyes to the possibilities around him, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose. His days were filled with activities, laughter, and the warmth of new friendships. He was determined to keep the momentum going. One afternoon, while browsing the community center's bulletin board, he noticed a flyer for a local book club. The club met every other week at the library, and it was open to anyone who loved reading and discussing books. Harold had always enjoyed reading, but had never thought about joining a group to share his thoughts. With a spark of courage, he decided to give it a try. The first meeting of the book club arrived, and Harold felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as he entered the library. He spotted a cozy room filled with chairs arranged in a circle, and a small table with snacks and refreshments. A friendly woman greeted him at the door, making him feel welcome, as she introduced herself and offered him a cup of tea. As the meeting started, Harold listened intently as other members discussed the book they had read that month. They shared their insights and personal connections to the story, each person bringing a unique perspective. Harold felt himself becoming more engaged in the conversation, sharing his thoughts when it was his turn. He spoke about how the book reminded him of his own experiences and the lessons he had learned throughout his life. The group welcomed his contributions with enthusiasm, and he felt a sense of belonging. It was refreshing to be in a room filled with people who appreciated literature and were eager to exchange ideas. By the end of the meeting, Harold had made a few new friends and was already looking forward to the next gathering. In the following weeks, Harold not only read the books for the club, but also explored new genres that he had never considered before. He discovered the joy of historical fiction, the thrill of mysteries, and the beauty of poetry. Reading became a delightful escape, and he often found himself lost in stories that transported him to different times and places. Outside of the book club, he continued to engage in various community activities. He signed up for a cooking class at the community center, where he learned to prepare different cuisines from around the world. Harold had always enjoyed cooking, but now he was experimenting with new recipes and ingredients. The classes were lively, filled with laughter and shared meals, and he loved getting to know his classmates. One evening, during a cooking class, he met a fellow participant who shared his passion for gardening. They quickly struck up a conversation, exchanging tips and stories about their favorite plants. The participant invited Harold to visit their garden the following weekend, and he eagerly accepted. It was a chance to connect with someone who understood his love for nature. The weekend arrived, and Harold found himself in a beautiful garden, filled with vibrant flowers and lush greenery. He marveled at the colors and scents surrounding him, feeling a deep appreciation for the beauty of nature. His new friend guided him through the garden, pointing out various plants and explaining their care. Harold shared stories about his own gardening experiences, and they bonded over their shared interests. As they worked together, planting flowers and sharing laughter, Harold realized how much joy these connections brought to his life. He had built a small community of friends who shared his interests, and it made him feel alive. With each passing week, Harold's social circle grew, and he felt more integrated into the fabric of his community. He attended local events, joined group hikes, and even volunteered at the community center. His days were now filled with meaningful activities that brought him happiness and fulfillment. He also reflected on how much his life had changed since he had purchased his car. It had opened the door to new adventures, but more importantly, it had connected him with people who inspired him to live fully. He was no longer just an elderly man going through the motions. He was an active participant in life, ready to embrace whatever came his way. Looking back, Harold felt a deep sense of gratitude for the path he had taken. He had learned that it's never too late to explore new interests, make friends, and enjoy life's simple pleasures. With his heart open to new experiences and a renewed zest for life, Harold was excited for the future. The journey was far from over, and he knew there were many more stories waiting to be written. As the seasons changed, Harold found himself deeply entrenched in the rhythm of his vibrant community life. Each day brought new opportunities for connection, learning, and joy. He felt invigorated by the friendships he had cultivated and the passions he had reignited. His car had become more than just a vehicle. It was a reliable companion on his journey of exploration. One crisp autumn morning, Harold decided to take a road trip to a nearby town known for its beautiful fall foliage and charming shops. He packed a small picnic, grabbed his camera to capture the stunning scenery, and set off on the open road. The leaves were turning brilliant shades of red, orange, and gold, and he felt a thrill of excitement as he drove through the picturesque countryside. As he arrived in the quaint town, Harold was immediately enchanted by the charming streets lined with local boutiques and cafes. He parked his car and began to wander through the shops, taking in the unique crafts and handmade goods. Each store was filled with the warmth of creativity and the passion of local artisans. He enjoyed chatting with the shop owners, learning about their crafts, and sharing stories about his own interests. After browsing for a while, Harold found a cozy cafe that promised homemade pastries and hot coffee. He ordered a warm apple pie and sat at a window table, watching the world go by. As he savored the sweet and comforting pie, he reflected on how much his life had transformed over the past months. The simple act of exploring new places brought him joy and a sense of purpose. With a full stomach and a happy heart, Harold continued his adventure by walking to a nearby park famous for its stunning views of the surrounding hills. As he hiked along the trails, he breathed in the crisp, fresh air and felt a sense of peace wash over him. The vibrant colors of the leaves and the sound of rustling branches created a symphony of nature that filled him with gratitude. At one viewpoint, Harold stopped to take a few pictures, capturing the breathtaking scenery. While he was focused on his camera, he noticed a family nearby, trying to take a group photo. They looked a bit flustered, struggling to fit everyone into the frame. Without hesitation, Harold approached them with a warm smile. "Would you like me to take a picture for you?" he offered. The family gratefully accepted his help, and he happily snapped a few photos. As they reviewed the pictures together, laughter filled the air. They thanked him for his kindness, and Harold felt a sense of connection with them. This small act of generosity reminded him that life was about sharing moments, and he cherished the warmth of that interaction. After spending a few hours enjoying the park and connecting with the family, Harold decided it was time to head back home. He felt fulfilled, having experienced the beauty of nature and the joy of connecting with others. As he drove back, the setting sun painted the sky with brilliant hues of pink and purple. He couldn't help but smile, grateful for the adventures that awaited him. Once home, he shared stories of his day with his friends from the book club and his gardening buddy. They listened with delight as he recounted his experiences, including the family he had met and the beautiful sights he had seen. They encouraged him to plan more trips and even suggested they join him on his next adventure. That night, as Harold sat on his porch, he reflected on how far he had come. He had transformed his life from a routine existence into a tapestry of experiences, rich with friendships and activities that brought him joy. He no longer felt overlooked or limited by age. Instead, he felt empowered and inspired. With a heart full of gratitude, Harold made a promise to himself. He would continue to seek out new experiences, embrace the beauty of each day, and remain open to the connections that life had to offer. The journey he had embarked upon was far from over, and he was excited to see where the road would take him next. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Harold realized that life was a beautiful journey meant to be shared. He looked forward to many more adventures, more stories to tell, and countless memories waiting to be created. With each passing day, he was reminded that it's never too late to start anew, and that every moment held the potential for something extraordinary.